So let's talk about my favourite films because there are a lot of them. First up, Kill Your Darlings. Kill Your Darlings is quite dark and twisted, and it's about the Beat Generation, which were a generation of poets. So the Beat Generation was a literary movement created by a bunch of different authors, including Allen Ginsberg, who is kind of the protagonist of Kill Your Darlings. It explores politics and sexual freedom and, sexuality and American culture, and it's kind of what influenced the post-World War II era. So Kill Your Darlings is really, as I said, really dark, and basically Allen Ginsberg, who is played by Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, he goes off to college, and that's where he meets Lucien. Lucien kind of gets him into this whole Beat Generation, and it is Lucien who introduces him to, Jack Kerouac and William Burroughs. So there's, I don't know whether you'd call it a subplot, but it's kind of the before of the Beat Generation. It's like how Allen Ginsberg came to be within the whole poetry scene. So there's an interesting kind of theme with David, Chimera, and Lucien, and it's really edgy, and it's what brings all of them together. So Lucien is what brings all of these poets together, and it's not in a nice way. I think when you talk about bringing people together, it's often in a good way. I don't think Kill Your Darlings is a happy film by any means. I think it's really interesting though. It's quite, I think you kind of have to watch it to get what I mean, but I would definitely really recommend it. Secondly, within the theme of poets, Dead Poets Society, I am so fond of this movie. I think it's beautiful. I cry every single time I watch it, and I always get chills at the very end. Ugh. Personally, I think it's one of Robin Williams' best films. I think his acting in it is beautiful. And so basically it's about an all-boys boarding school, and they have this amazing teacher called Mr. Keating, and he's new to the school, and he has all these revolutionary ideas about poetry and love and finding inspiration, and he's such a good soul, and there's so many beautiful quotes that have come out of his mouth. And the boys start a underground poetry club, and it's very much about finding yourself and going against the grain, not going into arts instead of going into business during a time when business was very much the forefront, and it's about, boys being vulnerable, which especially at that time was definitely frowned upon. So I'm so very fond of this film, and I would recommend it to absolutely everyone. There is a trigger warning of suicide though, so be aware of that. Thirdly, Hunt for the Wilder People. Hunt for the Wilder People is talked about by a lot of non-New Zealanders, which I find really interesting, that a New Zealand film has become quite popular overseas. I think whenever New Zealand is mentioned by other people, we're all like, what? People know we exist? So it's filmed in New Zealand with a pretty much all New Zealand cast, which is great. And so it's about a boy called Richard Baker, and he has all these kind of sad things, but the humour in it is the peak of New Zealand humour, and it seems to bode quite well with British humour as well. I know that our country's humour is very similar. It's just hilarious, you're laughing the whole time. Basically, the boy, Richard, and his uncle go on a they go on a manhunt and they get chased down and things, and they go through the New Zealand forest. So if you're not a New Zealander, you can kind of have a little insight into what New Zealand forests kind of look like. So if you're in the mood for a good comedy, I would recommend Romeo plus Juliet. So this is directed by Baz Luhrmann, who I think is probably my favourite director of all time. And I'm not just saying that because that's a Scam reference. Romeo plus Juliet I watched in 2013 when we were studying 2014 when we were studying Romeo plus Juliet. I love the way that he's been able to make Shakespeare modernised, and how they do speak in, Shakespearean. They aren't like speaking in English. Obviously there's Leonardo DiCaprio in it, who is amazing, such an amazing actor, and I love all of those characters. I love how well the whole thing fits together, and how heartbreaking it is at the end, and how you can really see, teen angst played out for, our modern audience. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. This film makes me so happy. I love watching it. It's such a good film. So it's about a guy called Walter Mitty, and he's living his life as a daydreamer. He's constantly seeing all of these times when he could be doing all these amazing things, but he's stuck in this office job. And well, there's a quote from the film, but it's by one of the explorer guys, and so the quote is, "To see the world, things dangerous to come to see behind walls, draw closer, to find each other, and to feel. That is the purpose of life." The kind of idea of it is getting out of your comfort zones and living, that's the entire point, is the secret life. He's never really lived his fullest life, and once he goes out there and he lives it, he does all these amazing things. He skateboards away from an eruption, he wrestles with a shark, all of these just brilliant things, and he learns so much about himself. And I am a sucker for a good character arc and beautiful visuals. And the perks of being a wallflower. So the perks of being a wallflower I have talked about in my books I read in 2016 video, which I will link. The perks of being a wallflower, the film, is the quintessence of teenage adolescence, which, try saying that 5 times fast. A lot of people already kind of know about the plot, but it's about a boy named Charlie, and Charlie is played by Logan Lerman, and then you've got your Ezra Miller, who just brings his character to life. Just the epitome of Patrick, and the epitome of Basildon Grimpit, if you've read Carry On. And then you've got Emma Watson as Sam, and I love Emma Watson. I think that they do an incredible job of bringing the book to life in a way that isn't cheesy, and it's very beautiful, and I love it for a coming of age film. I think it's probably my favourite coming of age film. And then we've got The Great Gatsby, which I am currently studying in English, so that makes it a little bit interesting. I don't think I realised on first viewing of The Great Gatsby how much symbolism and motifs there are, because there are a lot, and it's just put together so beautifully. The symbolism of Gatsby and how he's got all this mystery shrouded around him, and how Daisy's just this epitome of innocence, and how she's actually really naive, and how there's always all these things lurking under the scenes that you don't quite know about. It makes for a really interesting film. And I also love that it's from the point of view of Nick Carraway, who is kind of, he becomes Gatsby's only friend, and I think it's a really interesting take on this ideal of perfection and kind of that money equals happiness, which is the biggest theme of all throughout the entire thing. And then you've got Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump I watched when I was probably a little bit too young to have watched it. I love Forrest Gump. I've always loved Forrest Gump. I think that's such a good film. It makes me laugh in the best way. It's so heartwarming, and I will always love Forrest Gump. There will never be a day in my life when I don't love Forrest Gump, and I don't care what anybody says about that film. That film is the light of my life and the love of my soul. The Breakfast Club, which is just 80s angst, just 80s teenage angst, and I find it's really kind of romanticized within our modern culture. You know, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, The Breakfast Club, just for its aesthetic, which obviously, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but I really like the kind of hidden morals behind it of, you know, finding yourself and how these are the labels that everybody else describes you as, but, you know, everyone's so much more than people see on the surface level. It's just a really good film, you know. If you're seeing a lot of kind of teenager films in this, that's because I am a teenager and I can really relate to a lot of it. So I've got Lars and the Real Girl. Lars and the Real Girl is a Ryan Gosling film, and I wrote an essay on it last year, I think, and it sounds really, really weird when you describe Lars and the Real Girl to other people, because it is about a guy called Lars who buys a sex doll, but he's not using it for sex, and he doesn't even know that. He has a delusional mental illness, and the way that mental health is addressed is excellent, because you're able to see how the community accepts his mental health and how at the start they don't, and how as Lars's mental health changes, you know, the scenery changes. A really interesting motif throughout is that it's winter, so which is a symbolism for Lars's mental state. So if you closely watch it and you analyse it, you'll see that when Lars is really confused in his thoughts, which is when Bianca arrives, it is heavy, heavy snow. And towards the end of the film, you see the lessening of the snow, and as Lars's mind clears, so does the snow. So that's a really, really interesting motif that I love, and it's such a good film to analyse. I would really recommend you watching it just so you can learn a lot of different things, and obviously it's got Ryan Gosling in it, so if you're a Gosling fan or you like looking at his face, don't worry, watch Lars and the Real Girl. And then for my ones that I could watch for hours and hours, and I have watched for hours, is first of all Legally Blonde. Legally Blonde is my inspiration movie. It's like the inspiration. I know it's like really typically white feminism, but as far as, you know, the Bechdel test and things like that, Legally Blonde is so important, because the entire point of it is that you can embrace your femininity without being stupid. You know, I think we have a lot of connotations around blonde hair and wearing pink and how that associates to not being intelligent, and Elle Woods just completely flips it around, and she's herself and she's a good person, and she triumphs overall by hard work and dedication, and in the end, you know, the women become friends and they realise that they don't need this man this bad man who is trying to pit them against each other, and that's kind of, you know, the bond of friendship and triumphing over all of your obstacles and kind of, you know, rebelling against stereotypes. The Devil Wears Prada. So The Devil Wears Prada I love. In 2014 I watched it like once a week because I loved it that much. The Devil Wears Prada is about Anne Hathaway's character, pretty sure her name's Andy. Andy goes to New York to become a writer and, you know, a proper journalist, and she gets a job at a fashion company with Meryl Streep's character, who is kind of supposed to be a take on Anna Wintour. And so it's about the fashion industry and a lot of the problems and underground complications. And it's about how Miranda kind of, you know, she sacrifices her own happiness and the happiness of those around her for getting more and being higher in the workplace. And in some kind of twisted way, it's similar to Great Gatsby in that Miranda doesn't have a lot of friends and she sacrifices everything for her job. And I really recommend if you just want something to zone out to. I love that film. So yeah, that's about it. Let me know if you've got any film recommendations in the comments. I always love finding new films, so leave them down there. Yeah, and I will see you tomorrow.